Mitchell, a three is good. Plus the foul. A chance for four. Only three to shoot. Gonna have to make something happen. Clark through the lane, reverses it in. Post feed. Boston. Oh, beats the clock. Wow. Indiana will reset. Clark fire away. You bet.
Hello, Fever fans, and welcome back to the Pacers Fever Show, your home for all things Indiana Fever basketball. On this episode, we break down a huge night at Gainbridge Fieldhouse as the Fever take down the Connecticut Sun in a gritty physical battle to clinch their spot in the Commissioner's Cup Championship coming up on Tuesday, July 1st. The Fever got the win, but it didn't come without controversy, as this one got chippy, and the officiating has everyone talking, including Fever head coach Stephanie White, who didn't hold back in her post-game comments. We'll dive into what she had to say, the overall state of WNBA officiating, and how this game turned into more than just basketball. Plus, the Indiana Fever head out west for the first time this season. We preview the start of this stretch as Indiana gets ready to face the Golden State Valkyries for the first time ever. It's a historic matchup with the league's newest expansion team, and it could be the beginning of a true measuring stick moment for this Fever squad as they have a tough 3-game road trip coming up out west. Let's get into it. Indiana Fever 11th game of the season. They moved to 6-5 with the win over the Connecticut Sun. And in this game, it became so much more than basketball. Fever beat the Sun 88-71 on Tuesday night. But at Gainbridge, it got ugly. And it was, from the start, it felt that this was brewing, and it ended up happening because you have one of the more physical players in the league, and you've got a very good competitor, very intense player in Caitlin Clark. And those two collide. We'll talk about all of that coming up. But first, I want to talk about the Commissioner's Cup final, as I want to start this episode out with some positivity because the Indiana Fever have done it. They have clinched their spot with some help from the New York Liberty, who the Fever beat over the weekend. Fever clinched that spot because the Atlanta Dream drop a game to the New York Liberty late in that game. The Dream actually looked like they had the advantage, but the Liberty take control of that game at home and end up sending the Dream to a 3-2 record, and the Fever finish at a 4-1 record in the Commissioner's Cup and end up moving on to play the Minnesota Lynx. That championship game will be on July 1st, where they will face Nafisa Collier and a really good Minnesota Lynx team. The Lynx, again, faced the New York Liberty in last year's Commissioner's Cup title game and the 2024 WNBA Finals. The Lynx won the cup last year, so they will be looking to defend that cup, that hardware, keep it in Minnesota for another year. But it was a tough road to get here. The Fever had to do it without Caitlin Clark for most of that stretch, and they end up getting her back, and they capitalize on her presence on the floor, getting her back into the side, as well as Sophie Cunningham, and they are moving on to that championship game. That game will not count against their record or the Lynx record. It is a game that will be played in Minnesota, but it will be just a championship game. I think a good challenge for this team to go up against one of the league's best in Nafisa Collier and the Lynx, try to compete with them, because there could be a chance down the road where you see them again, maybe in a WNBA final, if you get to that and you can knock out the Liberty on the Eastern Conference side of things. But again, I really feel confident in the Fever being able to contend for a championship this year. You know, obviously, the teams that will compete in the playoffs, the 8 teams that get there, I think that the Fever are at least the top 3 or 4 in that conversation, and I think they'll have a chance to either play the Liberty or the Lynx, depending on how the playoffs shake out. I really do feel like they are a top 3 team, and maybe the second best team in the Eastern Conference right now between the Liberty and the Fever. I think that's a conversation that is definitely warranted, but there are other teams in the conference that will make a case for just how good they are as well. I think the Dream are a good team, and then out west, you've got a handful of teams that I think can contend for a championship. But that being said, we're not there yet. We're only 11 games into the season. The Fever moved to 6-5 and have a chance to win some in-season tournament hardware and some money. $500,000 prize pool up for grabs. So that, I think, is split amongst the players. And then also Coinbase, the official sponsor for the Commissioner's Cup, has chipped in an extra $120,000 in cryptocurrency to the prize pool to sweeten the pot a little bit. And that will be up for grabs. And I think a lot of those players would really appreciate that money in their bank accounts. And so they will be not only competing for the money, but competing for a chance to say they are the champions of the in-season tournament, and a tournament that I think has turned out to be pretty successful. I mean, the final will be very interesting because they will get to travel to Minnesota. I'm sure that place will be sold out because of the two star players that will be in that game and two players that will be favorites to win the MVP this year in WNBA. I think Nafisa Collier right now leads that in the WNBA voting. I think that she would win it if the season stopped today, but Caitlin Clark will not be too far behind and just is her second year in the WNBA. So that's an impressive feat, but I think it'll be quite the matchup, and we'll preview that as we get closer and closer to the Commissioner's Cup Championship. And again, that'll be on July 1st. So let's get into this game against the Connecticut Sun, because there's a lot to talk about, mostly after whistle kind of stuff, not really about the gameplay. We will talk, of course, about the game and how it shook out and what the Fever did well to win this game and win it handedly. But yeah, game summary. Again, Fever 88, Sun 71. The Fever started I need to change that. I keep doing that because I haven't changed it yet. Caitlin Clark starts for the Indiana Fever. And then you had Kelsey Mitchell, Lexi Holt, Natasha Howard, and Aaliyah Boston. Tawana Bonner still out for personal reasons, so she is not with the team. That was the only one of note. And then the Sun started Tina Charles, Olivia Nelson-Udoda, Bria Hartley, Marina Mabry, and JC Sheldon. Location, played it at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. And here's a quick rundown of what happened. Caitlin Clark, 20 points, 6 assists, and 4 3-pointers as the Fever win that game by 17 on Tuesday night. It had 3 ejections in the game. And with 46.1 seconds left, this is when it all happens in the fourth quarter. Connecticut guard J.C. Sheldon made a steal and race down the other way before being wrapped up in almost an open field tackle by Sophie Cunningham under the basket for a hard foul. Sheldon got up quickly, got into the shoving match with Sophie Cunningham, leading to Cunningham and Sheldon coming together. And it was quite a scuffle. It went into the first row of the fans there at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, into the camera well as well. You had security step in, and ultimately security is the one that has to come in and break it up. Obviously, the coaching staff for the Fever, and then some of the Sun player trying to get into breaking that up. It got really intense. I mean, Sophie Cunningham grabs J.C. Sheldon by the head and neck area, and they start talking about the situation together in a very hostile way. And that is when Lindsay Allen steps in, and she gets into a shoving match with Sophie Cunningham, and Cunningham's backed into a corner. Security guards, the refs are all involved. Stephanie White's in the background trying to get her players back to the bench. The bench starts to leak over into the bench players. So a lot of things happening. It was, I mean, it lasted for 20, 25 seconds, that scuffle, and just really intense. I mean, a lot of pushing and shoving and getting into the face of other players, a lot of chatter after as they kind of get away from that scuffle. It continues over with Caitlin talking to different players down the other side of the floor. And it got to a point where that was one of the most intense moments I think I've seen from the Fever perspective of things. And this has been something that has been discussed over the last couple of years, especially since Caitlin Clark has gotten there. There's been just a lot of unnecessary physicality shown towards Caitlin Clark, and understandably so. I think you've got a player coming in who is very competitive, who is fiery, who is very intense, who is a competitor, and she will talk. She will talk to anybody. She's not afraid of anyone, even being a younger player in this league. She has earned her right to be that aggressive. And I think coming in as a rookie, I think people expect her to come in and just kind of lay down a little bit. But that's not her nature, and she is going to go down as arguably the best player in this league, in the history of this league, and will be in the discussions for one of the best players to ever play this game. And I think with that comes the territory of understanding that teams are going to want to hunt you. I think there are particular players in this league just because of the competitiveness that existed before Caitlin shows up and before Angel Reese shows up, and all these really great players that have started to come through the league. The game's getting faster, their players are getting better, faster, stronger. And I think you still have some leftover from a league that wasn't as fast, as strong, as competitive. I mean, some of these veterans grew up in a league that, I mean, it was not growing. It did not have the talent level that you see in today's WNBA. So I think there's this old guard that is still present. I think that there is this mid-level player that is still present where they're not as good as the newer players coming into this league. They're not as strong, they're not as physical, but they are as physical, and that's really where they try to overcompensate for what they are actually are on the floor. I think sometimes the talent level, you see a lot of the players that aren't quite to the talent level of the upper echelon of players. Those are the ones that tend to get into the grill of some of these star players around the league. And I think you see a lot of that happening where it's just, I mean, these players are very competitive. These players are used to seeing different styles of this league. And I think the pace is getting better. I think the improvement of the players is tremendous for the growth of this league. And every single basketball player that comes into this league now has gone through quite the process to get where they are, right? I think a lot of it so much now is earned, whereas I think before, there were some players that were really good college players, but because the talent level is just not there, they actually make WNBA rosters. You're starting to see that dwindle a little bit, but I mean, with expansion teams are of course going to have to use some of the players that are just veterans, and we'll talk about one of those teams coming up because we're previewing the Valkyries and Golden State coming up in the next game for the Fever. But again, I think there's just so much and Stephanie White alluded to this, just the fact that the players, the talent, the skill, everything's getting better. Everything is improving, but there's still some areas where the WNBA needs to be better in what they're doing. And the product, I think, has just grown so fast. I think it's gotten so quick, and the talent level, the things that the officials are seeing are not things that they're used to seeing at this level in this league. So I think there's a growing pains here, a learning curve for a lot of them. But again, 3 ejections come from this game. Sheldon was also center of another official review in the third quarter after she poked Caitlin Clark in the eye. And then Marina Mabry comes over and shoves Caitlin to the floor. 3 technicals were called in that situation. There was a coming together earlier in the first half where Caitlin and JC Sheldon come together. I believe it was JC and Marina Mabry, like right in that same area again on the other side of the floor, kind of getting into this shoving match a little bit. They had to be separated earlier in the game, and then this thing happens in the third quarter, and this thing blows up in the fourth. And this is something that in both leagues have existed for since they've been around. I mean, NBA has a hard time with this sometimes too, where when that stuff starts to happen, like it's this really gray area. I think that's what makes it so difficult. And this is where I understand more of the officiating side of things. I do feel like there is this balance that you try to have in the game where you want players to be competitive, you want players to be at their best, and you can't always eliminate the competitive spirit in a game because that's what makes the game good. That's what makes the product go run. And I think in that first dust up, that's a pretty common dust up. I think that there could have been a lengthier conversation, or maybe you do hit them with a double technical because it was a little bit more on the it aired more on the side of like extracurricular activities that were happening. It aired on the side of non-basketball stuff. When they first came together in that first half, they shove each other, they start to jaw, and the refs do separate them. I think at that point you say knock it off like right away, and then because they kept chirping, I'd have hit them both with double technicals, and then that eliminates the want and desire to do it again because they're both sitting on technical fouls, and they know if they get another one, they're both gone. I think that's where people saw some issue with the officiating not coming together and making a point in that moment. I think going forward they will. I think that the whistle will be a little bit tighter with some of these teams going forward, just because they'll be watching the film. The officiating crew will watch the film. They'll see where they can get better as well. They'll talk about it. They'll have meetings. They'll have discussions about how do they handle this. I do think that they've been far more reluctant to adapt to the things that are happening in the league, where everybody else, coaching staffs, broadcast, the players themselves, front offices, I think they've all adjusted pretty well to, we can't do this. We can't allow this to get out of hand. We've got to bring it back some, because it's product that's unwatchable when it becomes just a headhunting league. And I think the players have gotten better this year. I think you've seen less of those really physical, just non-basketball plays on players. I think you've seen a lot less of that than you did last year. I think the players accepted that. I think they knew that they had to be better. They knew that we can be competitive, but we can't be overly physical and exert force when it doesn't need to be. And I think they've all bought into that. I think the officiating is behind in this. And that's what Stephanie White was talking about. I do agree with her. I think that so much, and Debbie Antonelli, who does the Fever broadcast with Pat Boylan, they did a nice job of covering this too, where Debbie said, this can't happen. This can't continue to happen. Our league's got to be better. If we want people to watch this league, if we want to be role models for the young women out there that want to play this sport at a professional level, or even being a role model for the young boys out there that want to go to the NBA and play in the NBA and be role models for, like, people that are watching this, the kids that are watching this game, this is just unnecessary. And goes the same for the NBA. Like, you can't have these, altercations, because it does take away from the validity of the league. And I think it takes away from the growth and the overall enjoyment when it just becomes too much of a physical battle rather than basketball. I mean, you start to turn into wrestling and boxing at that point, and it's just not fun to watch. And it's not good for the kids watching this. Their role models getting into these scuffles, because then they think it's appropriate to do so and do that similar kind of thing. And it's so impressionable right now, just because of the tremendous growth that this league has seen over the last couple of years, because of Caitlin, because of Angel Reese, because of Paige Buchers. You look around the league and really good role models, and some of these players that are so very talented, that this league has grown tremendously. And you want to be the perfect and ideal role model for these kids. And I don't think that Tuesday night was really a good display of sportsmanship or, the right way to play basketball. I get it that sometimes you can get into these altercations, and sometimes things happen that are a little bit out of your control, but I think you got to do your best to try to control this. And the officials did not help in any stretch of this game to try to calm this down. And ultimately, it leads to this. It leads to it spilling over in the crowd. And it's not a good look for the league. It's not a good look for either of the teams. So the Indiana Fever win, combined with the loss from Atlanta, secure their spot in the Commissioner Cup final. Kelsey Mitchell added 17 points, and Tasha Howard 16 points and 12 rebounds for Indiana, who moved to 6-5 and above 500 for the first time since the third game of the season. Dantas off the bench scores a season high 13 points. Natasha Howard's double-double actually is her 50th career double-double. Tina Charles led Connecticut, who are 2-9 with 20 points. Olivia Nelson-Udoda had 14. And Jaylen Brown, who was playing with the Fever during training camp, played extremely well in this game, that redemption game. Scored 13 points. And Connecticut had a chance. They had it within 7 with 8:15 remaining in the third quarter, but didn't make another field goal until the 2:49 mark, and then they trail by 12, and the Fever put them away. I thought coming out of that first half, the Connecticut Sun looked like they were going to make a little bit of a run there at the Fever, but the Fever were able to impose their will. I think defensively, I think they did really well on the glass, much better than games prior, and got really good contributions from some really good veteran players. I think players that stepped up and made the difference were obviously Natasha Howard and Kelsey Mitchell, but I think Dantas' performance off the bench was really good too. and a really nice game for the Fever to win, as they will head out to the West and play 3 straight games on their first West Coast road trip of the year. But just going over the stats in this game, as far as team stats, the Fever 38 rebounds compared to the Sun 27 rebounds. The Fever had a 19 assist game over the 15 assist game for the Sun. Um, Looking at the turnovers, the Fever actually turned it over more than the Sun, 15-12. The big difference I thought was just the shot making ability. I thought the defense for the Fever contesting shots, making it difficult for the Sun, and the Sun the Sun ultimately lacking the offensive firepower that the Fever have. I think that ultimately is what comes down to why the Fever win this game. And really defensively, I thought the Fever played really well and have played well all season. I think the only thing they've really struggled with defensively is getting those rebounds, being a force in the paint, and they controlled the paint this game. This was one of the first games in a long time that the Fever really controlled the paint. I thought 38 points for the Fever inside the paint and 34 for the Sun. They also had a 6-point difference in the fast break points. Fever 11, Sun 5. So that was a big difference. But ultimately, the shot making, like I said, 45% from the field for the Fever, 39% for the Sun. From 3-point land, 42.3% for the Fever, and a 14.3% from the 3-point line for the Sun. That ultimately is the difference in this game. And I feel that the Fever are shooting the basketball a lot better. I think you're getting a lot more open shots with Caitlin Clark out there. With Caitlin's ability to hit Aaliyah Boston able to hit the corners with Kelsey Mitchell, Lexi Hull, Sophie Cunningham, even Dantas was knocking down some threes. I think they've got a really good team and can hit threes when Caitlin's out there. And that's something that I think the Fever were intentional about in the offseason. They wanted to shoot more threes. They wanted to hit more threes. They wanted to be able to kind of shorten that distance between them and other teams, because other teams at the top of this league can knock down threes like the Liberty, right? Like the Lynx. I think that you're trying to, maybe where you lack some in the depth and the talent level from the Fever against like the Lynx and the Liberty. I think an area where you can make up some ground there is if you're knocking down more 3-pointers and hitting shots at a higher efficient level, and your shooting percentages are better. I think that's where the Fever can really adjust. And because the Fever are going to have a difficult time inside the paint against some of these teams in the top of the league, I think that's also where the Fever have to get better, obviously in the paint. But a way to kind of negate that is to be better from behind the arc, because it opens up shots in the paint and it opens the ability to be able to drive and get to the rim. So I think the Fever are turning a corner there, and it helps having your elite star point guard hitting threes from the logo, hitting threes from like a 28 feet average in the regular season. I mean, this is insane. Just her ability to hit threes from all sorts of different places on the court. It just opens up so much defensive or on the offensive end against their defense and anybody's defense. Looking at what Indiana's done well this year, again, they continue to score points. They're fourth in the league in points scored, 84 points per game. And like I said, the 3-pointers have really been a good difference in this season. I think they're going to get better and continue to get better. They are still only attempting 23.8 3-pointers per game, which is only 8th in the league, which is, you look at the teams above them, and there are a lot of the top teams in this league. You look at the Dream, the Liberty, the Mercury, the Aces, the Lynx. They all shoot more 3-pointers than this Indiana Fever team. Really, the one competitive team, or I guess 2 competitive team below them that don't really shoot a whole bunch of threes are the Mystics and the Seattle Storm. The Storm, 19.9 3-pointers per game, and the Mystics are last in the league at 16.9 3-pointers attempted. 3-point percentage, here's a big difference too. The Fever, while they don't shoot a ton of threes, they do knock down a lot of them that they do shoot, 36.6%. And I think offensively they've gotten so much better at knocking down shots, and they're going to have to hit those threes to stay competitive against some of the top teams in this league, like the Dream, Lynx, and Liberty, and the Storm, Aces. They've been a lot better, and I think so much of that is Caitlin Clark in her second year finding those opportunities for players to get into their spots, to hit those open shots, to be able to stay in games, even when, maybe Aaliyah Boston doesn't have it going, or Kelsey Mitchell at times doesn't have it going. You've got so many other different players that are knocking down key shots, like Alexi Hull, who's been shooting the ball phenomenally throughout the year. And it's good to have those options outside of Caitlin and Kelsey and Aaliyah Boston. When one of those three aren't going, you've got the ability to hit other people that are hitting those and knocking down those shots. Trying to think, is there anything else I really wanted to talk about as far as, I guess just talking about I think that was it for that. What went right? Ball movement was really good again. I thought Caitlin Clark was moving the ball inside really well. Leah Boston hitting the corners with some of her passes. Natasha Howard on the glass was great. Having 10 plus rebounds a game, that is such a huge help for a team that does struggle at times to rebound the basketball. I think that's one of their weaknesses, is the ability to stay competitive and rebounding the ball in the possession game. The Fever do have a tendency to get into these really bad turnover games, but they've been a lot better, and Caitlin's gotten a lot better in her second year. And so that's going to be key. And then shooting the three ball well, fast break, and points in the paint. We all talked about those. So those were just some really good areas, I think, for the Fever in this game. You win it by 17. That's a pretty comfortable win. And that margin of victory will get you through a lot of games, obviously. So kudos to the Fever on this one. But let's talk a little bit about some notes from the game, and then we'll get into some headlines and what was said in the post game, because I think that's where a lot of this conversation is going to continue to happen as the season goes on with the WNBA. But just some notes real quick. The Fever earned $3,000 for their Commissioner Cup beneficiary Peace Learning Center, bringing their tournament total to $13,000 with a 4-1 record. So that money will go to the Peace Learning Center. The Indiana Fever advanced to the Commissioner Cup final, which will be in Minnesota on July 1st at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Natasha Howard, again, recorded her 50th career double in that third quarter. In the third quarter, finishing the night with 16 points, 12 rebounds. The double-double is Howard's second of the year. And then Kelsey Mitchell finished the night with 17 points, extending her double-digit scoring streak to 11 games, posting 10-plus points in every game so far this season. Media headlines, the hot takes that are going to come out of this fight. That's what's going to be. This turned into more of a fight than it did a basketball game. Post-game press conference. So, all of the people covering the Fever were tweeting this out. So I took out different quotes that I had heard or said or read, and wanted to discuss some of this, because I think it's interesting. I think that it speaks to just how concerning it can be with the officiating sometimes with the WNBA, and how this league can continue to grow. So the first one is, this is all Stephanie White speaking in the post-game press conference, and this is the most animated I think I've ever heard Stephanie White. She was not happy about this, and she doesn't put all the blame on the officiating. She does put some blame on the player, but ultimately it's because of the officiating that this happens with her team and the teams that they're playing against. But again, this first one, I think it was pretty obvious that stuff was brewing when officials don't get control of the ball game, when they allow this stuff to happen, White said. And it's been happening all season long. It's not just this game. It's been happening all season long. When you allow them to play physical and you allow these things to happen, they're going to compete, and they're going to have their teammates back. It's exactly what you expect out of fierce competition. I started talking to the officials in the first quarter, and we knew this was going to happen. You could tell it was going to happen. They got to get control of it. They got to be better. You've got competitive women who are all the best in the world at what they do, right? And when you allow them to play physical and you allow these things to happen, they're going to compete. They're going to have their teammates' backs. Later, when speaking about officiating again, White shared another thought. Everybody's getting better except the officials. So we got to find a way to remedy it. We've heard every coach talk about it. I don't know what the answer is. Last quote, every year when we have our league meetings in the fall and in the spring, we say the same thing over and over and over, and nothing has changed. Look, the official's job is hard. The player's job is hard. The game has changed so much. Players are faster, they're bigger, they're better, they're stronger. They're as good as they've ever been. They're as athletic as they've ever been. The game is fast now. Things are happening quickly. Everybody's getting better except the officials. We got to find a way to remedy it. So that's about as candid an answer as you will get about. I mean, Stephanie White's going to be fine by the league, and they'll discuss this because every coach has said this though in the WNBA. I think that what would help Stephanie in this situation is if more coaches started to speak about this as well. And we'll start to pay attention more and bring out some more quotes from the WNBA. And we might even start to get into more of a segment about what's going on around the league. Not just reading out the standings like we do, but we might talk about some other headlines and stuff just to get more full coverage of this league and what this team is doing inside of this league and how this league's performing. But again, like I said, I don't know if I've seen a coach that candid. I mean, you get some really frustrated coaches, especially after losses, but this is after a nice, comfortable win. But Stephanie White, I mean, very vocal and one of the well-respected coaches, head coaches in this league, one of the coaches that played in this league, that understands this league and how much it's grown, how much the players are better and faster, stronger. Like she said, she makes a really great point. When things are happening at a faster pace, the officials aren't quite sure or adjusted to how to look for different things that they're seeing on the court in real time. I think you can watch as much tape and stuff as you want, but the officials have to, they have to be better. I think they've got to see things for what they are. I think you've got to take control of games. And this is again another gray area where you don't want the refs to completely control games and the officiating and officials to have that much of an impact on the game. But you also want to make sure that the product is still good, that it's still watchable. And so much of what we've seen is the lack thereof of a whistle. And we've heard players complain about it, right? And the more that this becomes of a discussion, the more the players are going to continue to say things during games. You're going to have these moments like a Brittany Griner who went off on the refs during a halftime, like a walk-off halftime interview. And so she said things to refs that have been televised, and you've heard all these players talk about it. You've heard, and then it starts to kind of bleed into the players not liking other players on their teams because they think that they're too physical and they're allowed to get away with things. And there's just like this energy that doesn't really need to exist in this league. And then you've got other people, the talking heads, talking about how the officiating is awful, and therefore they're going to blame the game for not being as good, the product for being as good. And when you're trying to grow something, when this league has been as successful as it has over the last couple of years, you really want it to be the best that it can be. And with the officiating currently as it stands, it's just holding everything back. And I think that they will get better. I think that it's coming to a head here. I think that they will be more intentional. I mean, obviously, you've heard her say that over the last couple of meetings that nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. I think eventually something does change. I think something happens to where they're like, well, yeah, we've got to make this better, because the more and more they're going to hear about it from their fans, the more the fans start to turn off this league. I think that's where it's going to impact the dollar. It's going to impact the viewership. And ultimately, they're going to have to make a decision on what they believe is best for the league going forward. And what's best is to get better officiating, to get better on all facets of the game. And I think that's what you've got to do if you want to continue to grow the WNBA. So I love what Stephanie White said. I agree 100% with everything that she said. I thought she was so candid in what she said. I think she's been thinking on this and stewing about it a little bit. And this is the final breaking point for her. And I think the more that you continue to say things and the Players Association getting involved too would help. Next game up. So we're going to preview the Golden State Valkyries, and the Fever will play them on Thursday, June 19th. And that will be in the Chase Center, where both the Valkyries and the Golden State Warriors play. It is a beautiful arena, huge arena. It is a loud environment. It has been sold out even without the likes of Caitlin Clark and Buchers and all of them heading over there. These people are excited about their expansion team. They're excited about the prospect of having a team in Golden State. Well, not Golden State, San Francisco Bay Area. But Golden State is an electric sporting environment and fan base. I think that they are building a very competitive team They, with expansion teams, you're often getting players that have been not really necessarily castaways, but not necessarily featuring for their team. And I felt like they've put together a really good, competitive, solid team for their first year. And after a little bit of a rough start where they went 2-5, they won three in a row. They just lost to the Wings. I think it was on Tuesday where they lost to the Wings and moved to 5-5. But they'd been on a streak there for quite some time and now are 5-5. And I think that's a great start for an expansion side. You staying at 500, being in the playoff contention, and have a chance, I think, to make the playoffs if they continue to play the way that they do. They're going to have to weather a little bit of a storm here as some of their players have left for the Euro basketball tournament that's over there going on right now. And so we'll talk a little bit about that and some of the players that they're missing. But looking at how they've gotten to where they are today and heading into the game on Thursday, Valkyries said in the preseason that a lot of teams were underestimating them and that they wanted to defeat that narrative. And, it didn't start as well, but behind a fan base behind them and a team that I think is trying to prove themselves as a capable contender in this league as far as playoffs contention. I think they've done a really nice job, and they've picked up some really good pieces in the expansion draft and in the draft itself. I think growing this team and growing this fan base, it ultimately grows the league just because of how good their fan base is. And they've looked good so far. I mean, they've really started to play some good basketball. They've got a tough stretch coming because of the absences. They've got 3 starters that will miss time with the team because they're playing in Europe right now. But the biggest success story right now and so far has been Kayla Thornton, who was picked up from the New York Liberty in the expansion draft, has 4 double-doubles after just 5 total in her previous 9 WNBA seasons. This week, they had their first ever 3-game win streak with wins over the Aces, Sparks, and Storm. They've played some really good teams there in that stretch. Kayla Thornton has 18-plus points in each game of the streak as she continues to put up career best numbers. She's averaging 14.4 points per game, 7.4 rebounds per game, 1.9 steals per game in her 10th WNBA season. She spent time with the Liberty 2023-2024, but before that had been with the Dallas Wings from 2017 to 2022. And this has been her best season yet, which is crazy to think that her career high comes in her 10th WNBA season with an expansion side, with a side that is still trying to grow each day and now is doing it without some help from some of those players. There are 6 players headed to compete in the Eurobasket tournament, and they've got 4 of them, I believe it was. So we'll talk about what we'll be missing coming up, but that is a huge loss. And to aid some of the backcourt pressure that they've felt, Golden State signed former teammate of Paige Bucher's Caitlin Chen, who was on that 2025 UConn NCAA championship team. So they signed her. Kate Martin has stepped into a bigger role. And with with growth, you're going to have to play some of these younger players and try to figure out where they fit in your system. And I feel like Kate Martin is a good fit for anybody's system, a young player who is tenacious, who is a high IQ basketball player. The more high IQ players you can add to an expansion side, the better it's going to be. Even as young as Kate Martin is, I feel like she is very valuable to the team going forward just because of everything that she can provide as far as just how tough she is. She's able to defend well. She can rebound. She can shoot. She can do a lot of things that you need from, just a solid WNBA player. And I feel like Kate Martin has that ability to really make a difference. From year 1 to year 2, Martin has doubled her scoring average from 2.6 points per game with the Aces to 6.2 with Valkyries. She is also averaging nearly 5 minutes more per game. And she's had 2 really good performances off the bench in this last month. On June 1st, she hit her career high of 14 points in the first half against the Minnesota Lynx. Less than a week later, she followed that up with 12 points, 7 rebounds in a season high 26 minutes as the Valkyries dismantled her former team, the Las Vegas Aces. So a good matchup, I think. They're going to miss some key players, and we're going to talk about that now. So their starting lineup is not their typical, at least the one that they just used against the Dallas Wings. The one I'm using as references to what they'll probably use against the Fever coming up on Thursday. They're going to be missing, again, 3 starters because of the Eurobasket women's tournament. Right now, they are starting Kayla Thornton, their Stephanie Talbot, Monique Billings, Carla Late, and Veronica Burton. Players that are missing: Janelle Salon, she is playing for France. Julie Van Loo, who is playing for Belgium. You have Temi Fagbenle, who is playing for Great Britain, and Cici Zandolicini, who is playing for Italy. Salon, Fagbenle, and then Zandolicini are crucial to what this team does. Watching highlights from last year and just trying to get an understanding of how good these players are. I mean, those 3 are very vital to, I think, everything that the Valkyries are going to do and have success with. And you put them in and insert them in the lineup when you've got like a Kayla Thornton and Monique Billings and Veronica Burton. I mean, even Carla Late and Talbot, very good players, just not to the upper echelon of some of the players that they're missing. I mean, I think Salon is a very good basketball player. Zandolicini can shoot pretty well. Fagbenle, again, going to provide a lot of things that just some of these players that are stepping in her absence are just not going to be able to provide for this team. So you're missing 3 really key players who can score quite a bit for this team. And if you look at the stats for this Valkyries team, Kayla Thornton leads their team with 14.6 points per game. And then right after that, you've got the top 5 players. You've got 3 of them are 3 that are missing. So Janelle Salon, who's averaging 11.8 points per game. You have Veronica Burton, 11.2 points per game, and Thornton and Burton are still going to remain in the starting lineup. But then you've got Temi Fagbenle, who is averaging 10.3 points per game, and then Cici Zandolicini has 10 points per game. After that, Tiffany Hayes, 10 points per game. She's still going to be around. She'll be an option off the bench that I think the Fever are going to have to deal with. Monique Billings, 8.7 points per game. They get some really good scoring from some of their role players, and I think that's been key. I mean, what did they say? I think they call themselves a team of 6th women, like 6th man kind of thing. It's just a bunch of bench players that are really, really solid bench players that are getting the opportunity to start in the WNBA. And honestly, I feel like they've really proven themselves. I mean, a lot of these players have proven their ability to be able to compete against some of these starting players that they've been going up against for years, are getting the chance to finally get starter minutes and have done pretty well. I mean, they've weathered a lot of the storm, playing really good teams and beating the Storm and beating, again, the Las Vegas Aces. That's a really good stretch of games that you play them that well. And even if you look at their season or the regular season schedule, they beat the Mystics back in their second game of the season by 2. Against the Liberty in their first game, they got smashed, but then they play them again just 2 days later at New York, and they only lose that game by 5 points when Salon had 18 points. She's been really good. She had a double-double in that game and is somebody that they'll truly miss as she's not around with the team playing in that Euro basketball tournament. But then against the Lynx, only an 11-point loss, which is pretty good, I think, for an expansion team. That was at home, though. Lose a 9-point game to the Phoenix Mercury on the road, but then that's when they go on their 3-game win streak after that, where they beat the Vegas Aces on their home floor, in Golden State, and then they also beat Seattle in Golden State by 6. They stomped the Vegas Aces 95-68. But again, you look at this team, and there's a lot of players that are going to provide scoring, and I think they've put together a pretty good roster. I think they're going to be competitive. I think this is a team that we're talking about sneaking into the playoffs and could do some damage, because I do think that they are that talented. And if you look at the standings, again, I think you can see some pretty clear-cut favorites to make the playoffs and some teams that have really dipped below, I would say, even having a chance to contend for a playoff spot. Dallas at 2-11, I just don't see them getting back into it. So I think you eliminate them already. Connecticut Sun, I do feel like they're done as well. Just 2 wins of their first 11. The Chicago Sky are 3-8. That's going to be a really tough hole to dig out of. And so are the Sparks. I think at a 5-9 record, that's going to be extremely difficult to dig out of. But again, I think the Sparks, you can say, are still in contention. But with the way that the Sky have played, with Vanderloo gone, I just feel like I feel like there's just not enough for the Sky, the Sun, and the Wings. So I think if you're realistically looking at it, I could see 10 of these teams being in contention for a playoff spot. The Sky could surprise me, but I just their talent level is just not there. They're not as deep. I just don't feel like, unless Angel Reese really takes a huge step forward, I just don't see that team being a playoff team. So you're looking at 10 teams possibly that are contending for a playoff spot. And Golden State is sitting in 7th. So reading the standings, the Lynx in that first spot in the WNBA at 11-1, the Liberty at 10-1 in the second spot, the Dream in third at 8-4, the Mercury at 8-4 as well in the fourth spot, Seattle Storm at 7-5 in the fifth spot, the Indiana Fever at 6-5. Did I say in the sixth spot? Yeah. The Valkyries in the seventh spot at 5-6, and then the Aces in that eighth spot at 5-6. So if the playoffs started today, those are your 8 playoff teams. Mystics at 5-7 in the 9th spot, the Sparks 4-9 in the 10th spot, the Chicago Sky 3-8 in the 11th spot, in the 12th spot at 2-9 are the Sun and the Dallas Wing. The Wings are in last at 2-11 in the 13th spot. So right there with the Fever, they are that'd be a game behind, and then depending on the tiebreaker, I think the Fever still own the tiebreaker there, but the Valkyries sitting in a playoff spot currently, and they're now 11 games in. Sorry, they're 5-6. They're not 5-5. I'd written that before they'd lost that game to the Wings, but yeah, 5-6, a team that's looking to get to 500 once again on their home floor against a Fever team that. It'll be interesting because the Fever are 2-2 on the road. They did lose a game on the road with Caitlin Clark, 2 games on the road with Caitlin Clark absent against the Dream and against the Mystics. So I'm interested to see how they are with Caitlin on the road. They've really not played a lot of games. I don't know if she's played any games on the road, to be honest with you, actually, now that I think about this. I'm trying to think, but ultimately it'll be interesting to see just how the Fever play and handle the crowd. That will be, it's a sellout every time Caitlin goes and plays on the road anyway, because people want to see her. It's like Caitlin on tour. But I do feel like it will be a very competitive game. I don't think this is a game that you necessarily, even with the 3 absences, I think that they're still a good basketball team. I think that you've got some advantages where the Valkyries have some advantages in this game coming up, and it'll be a nice test, I think, for both teams to try to figure out what they can do. Obviously, players to watch are going to be Kayla Thornton. Monique Billings, I think, is going to be somebody that you're going to have to keep an eye on, just because the size there and her ability to score in the paint as well. And then you've got Letitia Umi here, and she is a pretty solid option off the bench. Kate Martin, again, really good option off the bench. And then Carla Late, who's a rookie point guard, but I feel like she's, every game she's growing more comfortable with the starting unit. And I feel she is also somebody that could have an impact on this game, because if you're eliminating her defensively and you're not letting that offense get settled in, the Fever will have the advantage. Keys to the game: Valkyries are shorthanded as far as players that have experience playing this year, and 3 of their top 5 scorers are going to be missing. So I think you've really got to take advantage of that. The Fever's defense has been really solid this season. I mean, if you look at just what they've done on the defensive side of the basketball, I think it's been really impressive, just because, again, I felt like this was a team that we came into the season questioning how good their defense could be. We thought it was going to be better with Stephanie White. I don't think we thought it was going to be this good. They're 3rd in the defensive rating at 95.8 defensive rating, and that's just a tick behind the Lynx, who are 95.3. And then the Liberty are an excellent defensive team at 92.3. But again, the Fever, top 3 defense Right now in the WNBA, the Golden State Valkyries are 98.8, and they sit in 7th, so right in the middle of the pack of the league. Just as far as advantages, the Fever just have so many advantages. I think defensively, it's going to be really tough for this team to compete against the Fever, just because the Fever haven't really turned the ball over too much this season. Like, they're getting really good at handling the basketball, keeping the basketball. And if you're not turning them over, the Fever are going to get what they want on the offensive end. And I think that's going to be trouble for the Valkyries. The Fever are 4th in scoring in the league, with a going up against a defense that's just kind of average. And I think with a lot of their missing pieces, the Fever can put them into a little bit of a blender with the way that they can move the basketball, and they like to run with pace. I think that the Fever have to be able to go after the Valkyries because of their lack of depth and depth that they trust. Take the crowd out of it. This is going to be a ruckus crowd, just because anywhere Caitlin goes, you're going to have all the Fever fans and all the Caitlin Clark fans in the building. But then everybody else against that is going to be off the charts whenever Caitlin's not doing as well. So again, I think you've got to come out, start fast, get Caitlin going, take the crowd out of it, and then just ignite the fans that are going to be there that are Fever fans, because you're going to have a ton of Caitlin Clark Fever fans there, just like you do everywhere else that you go on the road. Defend the arc. They do like to shoot 3-pointers. They don't make a high clip of them, but they do like to shoot them, this Valkyrie team. So if you look at the 3 points attempted, they're 4th in the league at 29.7. They shoot a ton of them, but they don't make a lot of them. They are last in the league, 27%. So again, I think with a lot of their players out, though, I mean, you've got a lot of threes attempted from 3 of those players that are going to be missing in Salon, Sandalacini, and Van Loo. They are in the top 4 of 3-pointers attempted. Kayla Thornton is going to attempt a lot of threes. She's not been shooting the ball that well. She's shooting 24.7% from 3. So she's hitting about a quarter of them. But I think you don't want them to start knocking down threes, because they're going to take a ton of them. They start hitting them, I mean, that's going to be bad. So even though they don't hit a high percentage of them, I think you still have to be concerned, because I do feel that they do have some nights where they're hitting those threes because they're taking a lot of them. I think you got to keep pace. But if you keep shooting the way that you have from the 3-point line, I think you're going to be able to match them and best them ultimately. I think that it's going to be a game that, if you're the Fever, you want to look at this game, I think, and say that this is a game you really want to win. If you're going to win a game on the West Coast swing, this is the game I expect them at least to have the best chance in against this Golden State team, because they do have to go up against the Vegas Aces. And while Vegas hasn't been as good as they've been in the past, then you also have to play Seattle too. And so it's a difficult stretch against Western teams that are kind of playing on the same level you are right now. And with Vegas struggling as they are, maybe you get a chance there. I think you got to feel really good if you're the Fever of winning definitely one game out there. You might even be able to get 2. I mean, if you can get 2 of 3 out on the West Coast, that's always a huge advantage that you'll have going into the rest of the season. If you can continue to go out West and win games in time zones that are way different than yours, and on the road and in difficult environments like there are going to be in Seattle, Golden State, and Vegas, those are all good environments to go play in to test exactly what you can do on the road. It'll be it's, again, like I said, it's like a litmus test. It's a measuring stick on what can this Fever team do on the road. Can their offense be as efficient as it has been in the last couple of games? I feel like they're really turning that corner with Caitlin Clark healthy again, with Sophie Cunningham back in the fold, with Hull hitting all of her shots. I think she's over like 50% shooting the 3 ball. Kelsey Mitchell is now lighting it up, 11 straight games with 10 plus points. It seems to all be coming together. Aaliyah Boston, I think, is, she's had some games here and there where she's not been as good and as effective. But I think even with Caitlin out there, getting Aaliyah Boston involved, it's going to happen, and it's going to continue to get better and better as the season goes on. So that's another threat that you have to throw at Golden State. I just feel like Golden State's going to be overmatched in this one. I do expect the Fever to win this game. It'll be a lot of fun. I think just the environment there and the fans there will be excited to see Caitlin, excited to see this Fever team, but also excited to see how their team can do against them. The possession battle, keeping them off the glass. They're one of the better rebounding teams in the league. I think they're top 3 in the league. I think you've got to keep them off the glass as best as possible, and that's going to require having Lexi Hull rebound, Natasha Howard rebound, Caitlin Clark rebounding, Sophie Cunningham when she's in. And then if DeWanna Bonner's back, I mean, that's a key piece that's still missing from the Fever, and I felt like they've played 2 really good games without her. Getting her back in the fold could be a huge difference. I mean, this team is already pretty deep, but getting her back and the way Sydney Colson's been playing lately, Dantas scoring the basketball really well, this team is really rounding out to be a deep team. And I think they're going to get better and better, and that's scary for the rest of the league because I really do. I think that the way they've been playing, the wins that they've had with Caitlin, I think this is a top 4 team at least, maybe top 3. You can make that argument with the Liberty and Lynx. So we'll see what happens, but I feel really confident about this West Coast trip just because I feel like the Aces aren't playing their best basketball. I feel Golden State is missing some really key players. I think you can take advantage of that. And then you play with house money against Seattle. So a team that's pretty level with you right now, I think it's a good test. So we will watch these games closely, see what comes out of them. Some final thoughts, schedule coming. So the Fever, after the Golden State game, they go to Vegas at 3 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN, ESPN Plus, and Disney Plus. They will play at T-Mobile Arena against the Vegas Aces on Sunday, June 22nd. Tuesday, June 24th at Seattle, 10 p.m. Eastern time on NBA TV at Climate Pledge Arena. And then Thursday, June 26th against the Los Angeles Sparks, 7 p.m. Eastern time on Prime Video at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. So they will return home after that West Coast trip, but then head right back out to Dallas on a back-to-back. That's a rough back-to-back, playing in Indianapolis and then flying out, and then they'll play Dallas about 18 hours, 19 hours later after off that flight. Oh, man, that's rough. But they'll go to Dallas Friday, June 27th, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time on Ion at American Airlines Center. I believe that's where the Mavericks play. I think Dallas is moving that game. I think that's one of the ones. And then they don't play again until July 3rd, which is almost a week later. So they'll wrap up June with a really good stretch here to see how they compete. Those are 2 very winnable games at the end of June. It'll just depend, I think, on how fit they are after that back-to-back where they have to travel to Dallas. And that'll be a ruckus crowd. And Paige, I think, is playing again. So that'll be fun. A lot of fun games coming up. Teams that we haven't seen yet. I feel like we were just in like a cycle of playing teams that we've played. I mean, look at this. This is crazy. So they played the Chicago Sky twice already, the Dream twice already, the Liberty twice already, the Sun twice already, the Mystics twice already. So they've played the same teams. They've cycled the exact same teams. Or sorry, the Dream 3 times. They've not shaken loose of those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They've played 5 teams this year. So we're finally going to get a break from them and see some new blood. So that'll be exciting. But yeah, looking forward to it. They go out west, play some really good teams out there, and it'll be a nice test to see what the Fever can do with Caitlin Clark on the road. So that'll do it for today's episode of the Pacer Fever Show. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and follow us on social for all the latest updates, analysis, and post-game reactions. Follow us over on socials at the Pacers Fever Show, where we would live tweet some games. You can also email us at thepacersfevershow@gmail.com with comments, questions, or whatever you want to talk about, chat about. You can find our episodes on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast. Always looking for somebody to join us as guest or co-host. So if you're interested in that, just shoot me a message on X and Gmail, and we can talk about it, maybe schedule a run through and see how we do. And if you want to do it for the Fever, we can do it for the Fever. If you want to do the Pacers side of it, we also cover the Indiana Pacers, so we can do that. Or if you want to do both, I am always looking for co-hosts or guests. So just shoot me a message, and I will get back to you on those platforms. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time on the next episode of the Pacers Fever Show, where we will be talking about their game against the Valkyries and previewing their next game against the Las Vegas Aces. Thanks for listening.